Welcome, dear listener. You've found your way to the sleeping hourglass. I'd like to tell you a story. Not the story of a kingdom's rise or fall, not of war or conquest, but of a single promise kept beyond life itself. A story that has traveled across oceans and generations, not because of its size, but because of its depth, because it speaks in the language of love, loyalty, and the kind of patience that outlives the ticking of any clock. If you find peace here, if these gentle hours are a place you'd like to return to, you're welcome to keep this little light burning by subscribing or leaving a kind word. But only if it feels right. There is no urgency here, only the slow turning of the hourglass. The year is 1924 and Japan stands on a threshold. The Taisho era lingers like the last amber light of evening before the darker storms of history gather. The old rhythms, the toll of temple bells at dawn, the rustle of silk in narrow streets, the measured bow of shopkeepers, still shape the nation's days. Yet in the cities, a new tempo rises. Steam trains sigh into stations and electric lamps hum where paper lanterns once swayed. In Tokyo, the air is alive with the mingled scents of grilled fish from market stalls and the oil of machinery. Wooden rickshaws share the roads with clattering streetcars, and the chatter of merchants blends with the ringing of factory whistles. It is a country in the midst of a delicate balancing act, one foot in centuries of tradition, the other in a swiftly modernizing world. Beneath this transformation lies something that refuses to be hurried, the Japanese ideal of loyalty. Not the loud, performative kind, but a loyalty quiet as moss growing on stone, enduring through seasons. It is embedded in the tales told to children, in the solemn gestures of samurai dramas, in the way an apprentice serves his master, and in the unspoken devotion between friends and family. Loyalty here is not a passing sentiment, it is an inheritance. The countryside breathes slower. Beyond Tokyo's restless hum, the landscape opens into rice fields that mirror the sky, forests that have stood since before the first emperor's line, and fishing villages where boats bob against weathered piers. Here, devotion is measured not in grand declarations but in daily acts. The tending of a field through wind and rain, the careful preservation of an ancestral shrine. In 1920s Japan, stories of steadfastness are as much a part of the air as the scent of pine after rain. The 47 ronin are remembered not as relics of a feudal past, but as moral touchstones. Poems praise the loyalty of cranes that mate for life, and travelers bow in respect before the graves of those who chose honor over survival. This is the soil into which the seeds of our story will be planted. For in such a land, the meeting of a man and a dog is never merely chance. It is a thread in a larger tapestry of devotion that stretches across centuries. Shibuya, at this time, is not yet the dazzling crossing known to the modern world. It is a modest hub, its station a wooden building with a tiled roof, its platforms lined with the hiss of steam engines and the clatter of wooden gaiter on the planks. Vendors call out from food stalls near the station gates, selling sweet bean buns wrapped in paper, roasted chestnuts in winter, and chilled barley tea in summer. The people here, whether they hurry to the city centre or return from its bustle, carry with them the quiet discipline of a society that values constancy. A shopkeeper may stand at the same counter for decades. A station attendant may wave the same flag each morning, year after year, with the same precision. It is into this living rhythm that Professor Hidesaburō Ueno will soon walk, his life bound to a four-legged companion who will, in time, become a living embodiment of the virtues his culture already treasures. But for now, both man and dog live in separate worlds, unaware of each other. The man lecturing on agricultural science at Tokyo Imperial University, the dog still unborn in the northern snowfields of Akita. The winds of change blow in from the west. Cinemas begin to open in Tokyo, showing silent films imported from America. Jazz music drifts from small cafes where young people, the moga and mobo, modern girls and boys, gather in defiance of older customs. Yet, for every flicker of foreign novelty, there remains the grounding pull of Japanese traditions, a reminder that the soul of the nation is not so easily reshaped. Loyalty, here, is more than a moral quality. It is a quiet rebellion against the transience of the modern age. It resists the rush of change, holding fast to what matters, and soon, in the story we are about to walk into, that loyalty will take the shape of a dog who waits on the same wooden platform day after day, through rain and snow, through years and wars, for a friend who will never return. But we are not there yet. For now, the stage must be set, the railways laid, the seasons turning, the threads of two lives drawing ever closer. Somewhere far to the north, under a sky heavy with winter, a litter of Akita puppies will soon be born. One among them will carry a heart shaped for devotion, a patience as deep as time. In the hum of the station, in the songs sung by workers returning home, in the footsteps of a professor walking to his lecture hall, the pieces are already moving. Loyalty has always lived here, quiet and constant, waiting only for a form the world will remember. Far from Tokyo's restless heart, in a snowbound corner of Akita, a small life is about to open its eyes, unaware that its path will soon lead to the wooden platform of Shibuya Station, and to a place in the country's memory. Winter in Akita Prefecture does not arrive softly. It claims the land in deep, deliberate strokes. Snowdrifts rising to the height of doorways, the air so cold that breath becomes a silver cloud with each exhale. The mountains wear their white crowns without hurry, and the forests sleep under blankets heavy enough to silence even the wind. In Odote, a small city known for its deep connection to the Akita breed, life slows with the season. The roads are narrow corridors carved between walls of snow, and the wooden houses seem to huddle together against the chill. Inside these homes, warmth is a treasure. The glow of charcoal braziers, the scent of miso soup steaming in the pot, the soft crackle of firewood. It is in one such home that a litter of puppies comes into the world. The mother, strong and thick-furred, licks each newborn clean, her breath forming faint clouds in the cold air that seeps under the eaves. Their fur is damp at first, but soon fluffs into tiny coats built for northern winters. Eyes still closed, they nuzzle into her side, their small bodies radiating a fragile warmth. The Akita breed is not ordinary. For centuries, these dogs have walked alongside hunters, guarded farms, and even served as companions to samurai. They are large yet graceful, dignified yet tender. In the old days, they were known for their loyalty unto death. Stories told of Akitas who waited at gates for masters who never returned, or who braved blizzards to follow them. The breed's character is woven from courage and quiet devotion, traits valued as deeply in rural Japan as any skill in the field. Among this litter, one pup stands out, though not for size or markings. His coat is a pale cream, his muzzle short, his ears not yet pointed into the proud stance of his kind. What draws the eye is the stillness in him. While his brothers and sisters squirm and nuzzle for space, he moves slowly with a calm that seems older than his days. When his eyes open, small, round, and dark, they hold a steady gaze as though he is watching something invisible to others. The breeder who tends them knows the worth of each pup. In Odote, an Akita is not simply sold, it is placed. As one might entrust a family heirloom, there is pride in sending them to good homes, where their instincts and dignity will be honored. Some will stay in the north, guarding farmhouses or joining hunters in the mountains. Others will travel far, their sturdy frames and loyal natures admired even in distant lands. But this cream-colored pup's path is different. No one here can guess how far it will carry him, not just in distance, but in the reach of his story. He will leave behind these snowfields, trading the crisp mountain air for the sooty breath of a city in motion. Yet the patience in his gaze, the stillness in his spirit will not change. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Children pull each other on sleds along the narrow streets. Farmers, their work slowed by the season, mend tools in quiet barns. The mountains stand immovable in the distance, their peaks hidden behind drifting veils of white. The puppies grow each day, their legs stronger, their barks more certain, their curiosity widening like the horizon itself. In these early days, the cream-colored pup learns without knowing he learns. He listens to the wind against the walls, to the footsteps of the humans who feed and tend him, to the subtle rhythms of the household. The Akita's loyalty is not trained, it is awakened. And in this pup, that awakening has already begun, a seed beneath the snow. The people of Odote have always understood that dogs, like humans, carry stories in their blood. This pup carries the lineage of dogs who once trod beside warriors, who guarded homes through bitter winters, who knew the shape of devotion not from command but from choice. He does not yet know the man whose face will become his compass, but his life is already turning toward that meeting. Spring will come, as it always does, though in Akita it comes shyly, arriving in hesitant thaws and brief sunlight between late snows. When it does, the roads will soften into mud. The rice fields will mirror the sky once more, and the mountains will release their winter hold on the rivers. It will be then, when the snow begins to leave the earth, that the pup will leave Odote. For now, he sleeps beside his mother, her warmth a steady presence in the cold. His breathing is slow, his small chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm with hers. Outside, a night train passes in the distance, its whistle echoing faintly across the frozen fields. A sound he does not yet know will one day call to him like a promise. Soon, the quiet of the north will give way to the restless hum of the capital, and the cream-colored pup will take his first steps toward the man whose life and fate will become his own. Professor Hidesaburō Ueno is a man shaped by both precision and patience. As a scholar of agricultural engineering at Tokyo Imperial University, he spends his days among diagrams of irrigation systems, soil samples, and the delicate balance between nature's cycles and human cultivation. His mind is disciplined, yet his heart holds a quiet yearning for companionship, the kind that lives not in conversation, but in presence. His home, a modest but well-kept house in the Shibuya district, is orderly in the way of a man who lives alone. Tatami mats rest beneath shoji screens that soften the daylight into gentle gold. A small garden behind the house grows with the same attentiveness he gives his students, its seasonal flowers blooming in silent gratitude. Yet, despite the garden's color and the books that line his shelves, the house feels incomplete, as though it waits for another heartbeat within its walls. The professor knows of the Akita breed. He has seen them in old illustrations, read of their loyalty in regional accounts, and admired their proud, wolf-like bearing in photographs from the north. They are not common in Tokyo. Their homeland is far away in the snowy reaches of Akita Prefecture, where they have guarded homes and accompanied hunters for centuries. To own one in the city is a rarity, a statement not of wealth, but of intent. When the chance comes. A colleague mentioning that a breeder in Odote has a litter, Ueno does not dismiss it. Something in him, perhaps as instinctive as the turning of a seed toward the sun, feels drawn. He writes to inquire, his pen scratching across the page in steady strokes, formal yet warm. Weeks later, word comes back. The litter is healthy, and among them is a cream-colored male, strong in build, calm in temperament. The journey north is long. Trains carry him from the restless pulse of Tokyo into landscapes that open into wide fields and snow-veiled mountains. As the stations grow smaller and the air sharper, Ueno finds himself thinking of the pup. He imagines its eyes, its gait, the feel of its fur beneath his hand. This is not a purchase, he realizes. It is the beginning of a bond, one that cannot be measured in transactions. Odote greets him with crisp air and the muffled quiet of snow. The breeder's home is simple, its yard edged by the marks of paw prints. Inside, the mother dog watches with calm, intelligent eyes as the man enters. Her puppies tumble about, their movements clumsy yet full of life. And then, there he is. The cream-colored pup, slightly apart from the tangle of siblings, sits with a stillness that draws the professor's gaze. His ears are not yet fully upright, his fur soft as new-fallen snow. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, something passes between them. Not excitement, but recognition. The professor kneels, holding out a hand. The pup does not rush forward, but walks toward him with a measured step, as if testing the truth of the moment. When the pup's nose touches his palm, Ueno feels an unspoken answer. Yes, there is no grand ceremony, no formal agreement, beyond the exchange of gratitude between breeder and buyer. Yet the professor leaves that day with more than a dog. He leaves with a presence that will reshape the contours of his daily life. The pup rests in a basket beside him on the train, his small body rising and falling with the rhythm of the wheels on the track. Outside the window, the snowbound world slips by, mile after mile, but inside, a new chapter has begun. Tokyo is different now that he carries the pup through its streets. The city's noise, its clatter of carts and streetcars, seems softened by the awareness of the small life in his care. Neighbors glance with curiosity at the rare Akita pup. Children point and shopkeepers smile. In his home, the pup explores each corner with quiet diligence before curling beside the professor's desk, as though deciding where his post will be. In the evenings, Ueno feels a change in the air of the house, the sound of paws on tatami, the small weight of the pup resting at his feet, the way he lifts his head when the professor moves from room to room. All these things weave into a rhythm. It is not unlike tending a garden, a slow, patient process in which trust grows quietly without the need for constant tending, yet deepens all the same. This is the professor's choice. not just the choice of a breed, nor even the choice of a particular dog, but the choice to open his life to a kind of loyalty that will, in time, be tested beyond anything he can imagine. He cannot see that far ahead. He can only feel the calm certainty of the pup's presence beside him, like a lantern lit against the encroaching night. Soon, the train that carried them south will carry the pup into the heart of Tokyo's daily rhythm. A journey where each footstep will draw him closer to a station platform, and to the ritual that will define them both. The morning train sighs into motion, its breath a cloud of steam against the pale sky. Inside the carriage, the air is warm and faintly scented with coal smoke and the tang of iron. Professor Ueno sits by the window, the cream-coloured pup nestled in a basket at his feet. The puppy's head lifts now and then, small ears twitching at the vibrations that hum through the floor. The journey begins in the deep quiet of Akita's winter, where fields lie under a thick quilt of snow and the mountains stand as silent sentinels. The train car sways gently, a steady rhythm that lulls most passengers into calm silence. Outside, the world slides by in long, white strokes. Forests stripped bare of leaves, roofs bowed under frost, rivers frozen in place as though caught in thought. As the hours pass, the scenery begins to shift, snow thins into patches, the rivers loosen and run again. The pup's dark eyes watch the changes without understanding, yet some instinct keeps him close to the professor's legs, leaning into the warmth that feels like safety. Every so often, Ueno bends to check on him, his hand resting briefly on the soft fur. No words are spoken, yet in these quiet gestures, trust deepens. The train clatters over bridges, each one echoing like a drum beneath their feet. Villages appear and vanish, clusters of wooden houses huddled against the wind, children running along the tracks to wave at the passing cars. In some towns, smoke spirals from factory chimneys, marking places where industry hums in winter's shadow. At larger stations, vendors step aboard with baskets of warm buns and tea, calling out their offerings in voices worn smooth by repetition. The professor buys a small cup of tea, its steam curling in the cold light that slips through the open door. The pup sniffs the air, his nose quivering at the mix of new smells, food, people, the faint tang of oil and iron that clings to travel. By the time they near Tokyo, the train is fuller, the conversations livelier. Men in work coats speak of business. Women in kimonos carry parcels wrapped in patterned cloth. Children peer from their mothers' arms, pointing at the blur of the countryside as it rushes past. The pup watches too, though what he sees is less the scenery and more the changing pace. The quickening of movement, the denser clusters of buildings, the sense that the air itself is shifting towards something vast. Then, as the afternoon light softens, Tokyo begins to appear, not all at once, but in signs. More trains on parallel tracks, yards filled with stacks of timber, streets thick with carts and carriages, rows of tiled roofs stretching toward the horizon. Smoke drifts in long ribbons from factories, and electric poles march along the streets in neat lines. The train slows as it enters the city, the wheels singing against the rails. The pup lifts his head higher now, his gaze moving from the window to the professor's face, as if sensing that this is the place they were always meant to reach. Tokyo Station is a world unto itself, a red brick building with high windows and the constant thrum of arrivals and departures. The air is thick with scents, coal smoke, roasted chestnuts from nearby stalls, the faint perfume of passing passengers, Ueno steps down from the train, lifting the pup into his arms to shield him from the crowd. They move through the station together, the man navigating with calm assurance, the pup pressed close against his chest, hearing the hollow echo of footsteps on the polished floors. Outside, the city greets them in full. Streetcars rattle past, shop signs swing in the breeze. The voices of vendors weave through the air like a constant song. Yet amid the rush, the professor walks steadily, his stride unhurried, as though carrying a treasure. Shibuya is still modest in these days, a district of small shops, narrow streets, and the wooden station that will one day become part of their daily ritual. For now, it is simply a place to pass through on the way home. The cherry trees lining the streets are just beginning to bud, their branches tipped with pink against the fading sky. At last, they reach the professor's home. The pup is set down on the tatami floor, his paws sinking slightly into its woven surface. He sniffs at the air, a mixture of ink and paper from the study, the earthy scent of the garden beyond the sliding doors, the faint traces of the professor himself. The house seems to pause for a moment, as if recognizing the arrival of something, or someone, who will change its rhythm. That night, the pup sleeps curled at the foot of the futon, the sounds of the city a soft murmur beyond the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle calls out into the dark, a sound he will one day know as part of his own heartbeat. Soon, these unfamiliar streets will become a map of scents and paths, and the wooden platform at Shibuya Station will claim its place at the center of their shared days. The first light of morning slips through the shoji screens, tracing pale lines across the tatami. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of cedar from the old beams above. In this quiet, the house stirs gently to life. A kettle hums its rising note in the kitchen, and the professor's hands, long and delicate from years of turning pages and chalking blackboards, lift the porcelain lid of a teacup. The clink is soft, almost ceremonial, a note that marks the true beginning of the day. Hachi lies nearby, curled on the floor, his ears twitching at the sound. He knows this music by heart. The low hiss of the kettle, the rustle of the morning paper, the slide of a chair's legs against wood. He stretches, paws forward, tail curling briefly before it settles. His eyes follow the professor's every move, though his head rests still on his forepaws. This is a dance he has watched and learned, the first act of their shared days. The professor finishes his tea, folds the paper neatly, and sets it aside. From the small cabinet by the door, he retrieves his polished shoes, setting them on the step. Hachi lifts his head higher now, his tail making slow sweeps across the floor. The scent of leather fills the air as the professor bends to tie the laces with deliberate care. The man does not hurry. Rituals, he believes, are not for rushing. Hachi rises and pads to the doorway, his nails clicking lightly against the wood. The professor glances down and their eyes meet, no command, no gesture, just recognition. They are ready. The street outside is narrow and quiet, the early morning air still cool against the skin. Dew clings to the leaves of potted plants set out by shop doors. Somewhere far off, a train whistle sounds, thin and distant in the pale light. The professor's stride is steady, the same each day, and Hachi matches it without thought. Sometimes they pass a neighbor sweeping the stoop. Sometimes only the wind moves in the alleyways. As they near Shibuya Station, the city begins to quicken. Bicycles rattle past, shop shutters roll open, and the scent of fresh bread escapes from a bakery on the corner. The station itself hums like a beehive, with voices and footsteps blending into a single pulse. Steam from the engines hangs in the air, warm and metallic, mingling with the scent of coal. At the ticket gate, the professor pauses. His hand rests briefly on Hachi's head, a touch so light it might seem accidental to anyone watching, but to Hachi, it is the unspoken promise. The man steps forward, handing over his ticket, and is swallowed by the press of passengers. Hachi sits at the same spot, his gaze fixed on the place where his master vanished from view. The morning crowd streams past him, boots and sandals and polished heels tapping against the station floor. Some glance at the dog, others pass without a second look. Hachi waits until the air changes. The sound of the departing train, the fading echo of its wheels on the rails. Then he turns and walks home alone, the streets now awake and bustling. The afternoon is a mirror of the morning. At a certain hour, Hachi rises from his resting place at home and takes the path back to the station. He does not need to be told. The rhythm is written into him now, as sure as the beating of his heart. The light at this time of day is different, softer, golden, and the station is filled with the smell of hot food from vendors, the murmur of tired travellers, the calls of porters hauling luggage. Hachi takes his place by the gate. The train from the university is never late, and soon the professor appears among the tide of passengers, his hat tilted slightly, his eyes lifting as they find the dog. A small smile creases his face. Hachi rises, tail lifting, and steps forward to greet him. There is no dramatic embrace, only the quiet warmth of two beings meeting again after hours apart. They walk home in the fading light. The professor speaks now and then, small remarks about the weather, the classes, the news. Hachi does not answer, yet his listening is complete. This, too, is their ritual, the journey home, side by side, in the settling calm of evening. Over weeks, then months, the pattern deepens, like a path worn smooth by countless footsteps. It is an invisible thread binding the days together, morning departure, afternoon return. Others in the neighborhood begin to notice the pair. The dignified man with the calm Akita, walking with the same measured pace each day. The station staff nod to them in passing. The flower seller near the corner smiles when they go by. Without intending to, they have become part of the station's own rhythm. Yet to Hachi, there is only the professor. The world beyond him is a blur of smells and sounds, colors and movement. But the anchor is always the same, the man's scent, his voice, the sound of his steps. The station is not just a place, it is a promise. The seasons pass quietly. In spring, cherry blossoms drift onto their path, caught in the fur along Hachi's back. In summer, the air hums with cicadas, and heat shimmers off the stone near the station. Autumn turns the ginkgo trees to gold, scattering leaves across the road. Winter brings frost to the eaves and clouds of breath in the cold air. But through each season, the walk to the station and back never falters. Morning rituals are not grand in gesture, but they carry a weight only time can measure. In the soft click of paws on stone, in the small pause before stepping onto the platform, there leaves a quiet devotion, one that asks nothing and yet gives everything. One day, the professor lingers at the gate, adjusting his scarf against the wind. His eyes rest for a moment on Hachi before he steps inside. The dog tilts his head, as if memorizing the sight, though he does not know why. The train takes his master away as always, and the platform grows empty. The waiting begins again. And so the days weave themselves into a seamless cloth, each morning and afternoon stitched by the same simple walk. But even the strongest threads can be snapped by a single, unseen moment. A truth the next day will quietly unfold. The professor's home is not large, but it breathes a certain peace. A stillness that seems to soften the edges of sound. Light filters through the paper shoji, turning the air into pale gold in the mornings and deep amber in the late afternoons. Books line the walls in uneven rows, some worn at the corners, others crisp and new. Their scent mingles with the faint aroma of tea leaves and ink. Hachi knows these rooms as if they were his own thoughts. He knows the step up into the study, the cool shadow in the hallway at noon, the patch of sun that rests on the veranda in spring. He knows the exact moment the professor's chair will creak as he leans back from his writing, the sound of his slippers brushing the floor as he moves to refill his cup. The days are gentle and ordered. In the mornings, after their walk to Shibuya Station and the professor's return from work, the house settles into a rhythm. The professor disappears into his study with a stack of papers and an open notebook. His lectures at Tokyo Imperial University leave his mind alive with thought, and he pours these thoughts onto paper in careful strokes. The nib of his fountain pen scratches softly against the page. A sound Hachi has come to find comforting, almost like rain against the roof. Sometimes, the professor reads aloud, not to Hachi exactly, but into the air, as if shaping the ideas more clearly by giving them voice. His tone changes with the text, warm and lilting when speaking of the seasons and their effect on crops, crisp and deliberate when describing scientific findings. Hachi tilts his head, ears pricked to the cadence more than the meaning. Words may not pass between them in a shared language, yet the dog understands the feeling behind each one. When the professor moves from one room to another, Hachi follows. Not too close, never in the way, but always near enough to catch the faint swish of his master's robes or the lightest cough. They are bound by an invisible thread of attention, each aware of where the other is without needing to look. It is a way of moving together that belongs to those who live side by side for many years. The kind of companionship that shapes itself quietly, like a river wearing its path through stone. Evenings are softer still. The professor sits by the low table with the newspaper spread before him, the lamp casting a warm halo over the printed words. Hachi lies nearby, his head on his paws, his breathing slow. The clock in the corner marks the hours with a muted tick. Sometimes, the professor reaches down to rest his hand briefly on Hachi's back, fingers brushing through his thick fur without breaking the rhythm of reading. It is not an act of calling or commanding, but of simple acknowledgement. You are here, and I know it. In summer, they take their rest on the veranda, the night air carrying the sound of cicadas and the faint scent of garden soil. The professor sips tea while Hachi lies stretched at his feet, both watching the dark sky deepen above the rooftops. In winter, they draw closer to the brazier, the warmth rising to meet the cold that seeps in from the edges of the house. Hachi's coat grows thick, his body a living source of heat at the professor's side. Their bond is not one of master and servant, nor even of man and pet, but of two lives attuned to each other's presence. Hachi does not sit at heel, because he is told to. He sits where his master is because that is where his own sense of place rests. The professor does not feed Hachi on a schedule because it is duty, but because it is part of the natural pulse of their shared day. These small acts are not obligations. They are affirmations. Occasionally, visitors arrive. Colleagues from the university, neighbors bearing gifts of pickled vegetables or fresh rice. Hachi greets them politely, a measured wag of his tail, but never lingers in their company for long. His gaze returns to the professor as if to remind himself that this is the true center of his world. The professor, for his part, has grown used to speaking to Hachi in quiet moments, not expecting an answer but taking comfort in the steady eyes that meet his own. When grading papers late into the night, he will glance up to find Hachi still there, watching with a calm patience that no human companion could match. The dog's presence is not a distraction, but a steadying force, the living reminder that beyond the theories and data, life is about the bonds we tend. If one were to watch them without knowing their story, they might see nothing extraordinary. A man and his dog, moving through the day's small necessities. But here, in the soft rhythm of shared space, is a truth older than history. Companionship needs no grandeur to be complete. It is enough to be near, to know the other is safe, to trust that the same steps will be walked again tomorrow. And yet, there is an unspoken fragility to such constancy. The professor is not young. His hair shows more silver now than when Hachi first arrived. He tires more easily after lectures. Hachi does not notice this as change, only as part of the shape of his master's presence. In his mind, each day will always bring the same voice, the same hand on his head, the same walk to the station and back. But time moves quietly, and even the strongest bonds exist within its flow. For now, though, the evenings are peaceful, and the mornings are sure. In the hush of the house, their footsteps remain perfectly in step. Soon, the rhythm will break, not with a loud crack, but with the quiet absence of footsteps where they should be. And in that stillness, the waiting will begin. The 21st of May, 1925 begins without ceremony. The light comes slowly through the shoji screens, soft and even, carrying the gentle warmth of early summer. The professor moves through the morning as he always does. Tea brewed with care, a brief scan of the newspaper, the measured lacing of shoes. Hachi watches from his familiar place by the door, the slow wave of his tail marking the progress of each small act. Outside, the air holds the scent of damp earth from a night shower. The streets are quiet, save for the occasional rumble of a cartwheel or the low call of a vendor setting up his stall. The professor steps into the lane, Hachi trotting beside him, their pace matched as perfectly as it has been for years. The routine feels eternal, as though nothing could intrude upon it. At the station, the same gestures unfold, the pause at the gate, the brief touch to the dog's head, the passing of the ticket. The professor disappears into the crowd, and the sound of the train's whistle carries into the morning sky. Hachi sits for a while, watching until the last trace of steam fades, then turns to begin the solitary walk home. It is an ordinary morning, indistinguishable from the hundreds before it. But while the city goes about its day, a thread begins to fray. At Tokyo Imperial University, the professor delivers his lecture with his usual composure. Colleagues later recall that he seemed well, even animated, as he spoke about the latest developments in agricultural science. The room smells faintly of chalk dust and ink. The windows are open to the mild air. Then, in a moment that will divide before from after, his words falter. His hand clutches at the desk. A sudden, unseen rupture in the brain, a cerebral hemorrhage, pulls him down into silence. Help comes quickly but cannot reach far enough. Within the hour, the professor's life has ended. Outside, the sun continues its steady climb. The streets bustle, trains run on time. The news travels in ripples, reaching colleagues, students, and finally his household. But there is one who will not hear the words, who will not understand the finality they carry. Afternoon drapes itself over Shibuya Station in shades of gold. The air is warmer now, bustling with travelers and the chatter of returning school children. Hachi takes his place by the ticket gate. At the familiar hour, the sounds and scents of the crowd swirling around him. He waits, ears pricked for the cadence of footsteps he knows better than any other. The train arrives. Passengers spill out in twos and threes, reuniting with loved ones, hurrying toward errands, or simply melting into the city's rhythm. Hachi's eyes scan the flow, his tail poised to lift, but the face he searches for does not appear. The crowd thins. The platform empties. Still, he waits. The station attendants notice him lingering longer than usual, his gaze steady on the gate as though willing a figure to step through. One offers him a gentle pat. Another mutters something about the professor running late. Hachi remains, the daylight slipping into dusk, the electric lamps of the station flickering to life. Eventually, the vendors begin to pack away their wares. The smell of grilled fish fades into the cooling night air. The last trains of the evening come and go, the metallic clatter echoing against the station walls. Hachi is still there, sitting in quiet dignity, as if holding the door of the day open until his master can return. Somewhere in the city, arrangements are being made for a funeral, for the closing of a chapter in human affairs. In the house they shared, papers lie neatly stacked on the desk. A teacup rests where it was left that morning, and a pair of slippers waits by the door. But Hachi's world is measured not in such details, but in presence and return. He does not know absence as final, only as delayed. The idea that a day could end without reunion does not fit within his understanding. So he holds his post, watching the flow of strangers, waiting for the one face that will bring the rhythm of life back into step. Night deepens, and finally he turns toward home. His paws carry him down the quiet streets, but every so often, he glances back over his shoulder toward the station, as if he might see the professor coming at last, hat tilted, stride steady, eyes lifting at the sight of him. The next morning, Hachi is there again, walking to the station with the same steady pace, sitting in the same place by the ticket gate. The train arrives. The passengers step out. And again, the man he waits for does not come. The pattern will repeat day after day. But on this first evening, this first breach in the unbroken circle of their life together, the waiting feels like a pause between breaths. It is the moment before understanding takes root, before the weight of absence settles into the bones. Some changes announce themselves with noise and chaos, others arrive like a shadow slipping across the sun. For Hachi, the day everything changes is quiet, so quiet that it takes years to realize that the rhythm he knew has ended. And so begins a new kind of mourning, one that still carries him to the station, but no longer toward a meeting, only toward a vigil, that will outlast the seasons themselves. The days after the funeral are a blur to human memory. A flurry of condolences, the rustle of black robes, the scent of incense curling upward into still air. But for Hachi, the change is sharper, more bewildering. The professor's voice no longer sounds in the morning. His chair remains empty in the evenings. The familiar scent that had filled the house for years now clings only faintly to a coat left hanging by the door. People come and go. Relatives, neighbors, acquaintances from the university. Their tones are hushed, their movements deliberate, but their faces are not the one he searches for. Hands reach down to pat his head, but the touch does not carry the same weight, the same quiet conversation of skin and fur that he once knew. One morning, a new pair of hands leads him out into the street, away from the home he had guarded. The professor's possessions have been divided. The house no longer belongs to the life they shared. Hachi is taken to a relative's home, a place with unfamiliar walls, strange voices, and a garden that smells of other dogs. It is not unkindness that moves him. The people mean well, offering food and shelter. But kindness is not the same as belonging. In the new house, he lies on the floor, eyes open in the dark, ears straining for footsteps that will never come. The hours pass without the morning ritual, without the walk to the station, without the soft click of the ticket gate opening to release his master. But memory is stronger than walls. On the third afternoon, while the household is busy with its own tasks, Hachi slips away. His paws take to the street without hesitation, following a path his body remembers more than his mind. Each corner unfolds like the turning of a page. The alley with the weathered stone, the stretch where the ginkgo trees line the road, the bakery where warm air drifts into the street. The city is louder now than it was in the quiet hours of their morning walks. Vendors call out to passing customers. Carts rattle over cobblestones, and the air carries the mingled scents of fish, rice, and coal smoke. But Hachi does not linger. His pace is steady, his nose twitching at every familiar landmark. The sun is already leaning westward when the station comes into view. Shibuya Station hums with afternoon life. Commuters step briskly from the trains, their eyes on the road ahead. Porters move quickly, balancing luggage. A vendor calls out the price of sweet buns to anyone passing near his stall. The air smells faintly of oil from the engines, tinged with the iron scent of the rails. Hachi makes his way to the ticket gate, to the very spot where he had always waited. He sits, tail curled neatly around his legs, and scans the faces flowing past him. His eyes move with each figure, a quick glance, a brief measure, a flicker of hope. But none are the professor. The crowd thins, replaced by another trainload of passengers. Again he searches. Again the hope rises, then falls. The platform is a river of strangers, but Hachi waits as if the next one could be the moment when the current delivers a familiar face. Hours pass. The light shifts from afternoon gold to the muted grey of evening. Lamps are lit. The vendors close their stalls. Some of the station staff recognize him from before, exchanging glances but saying nothing. A kind hand offers him a scrap of food, which he takes politely, chewing without haste, his eyes never leaving the gate. When the final trains of the night pull in, their whistle piercing the air, Hachi stands for a moment, ears forward. The passengers are few now, their steps slower. Still, the professor does not appear. Slowly, as the station quiets, Hachi turns and begins the walk back. He will do the same the next day, and the next. What he does not know, what no one tells him, is that this will be the shape of his life now. The home he has left behind will never reopen its door to the man he loves. The walk to the station will never end with a reunion. Yet something deeper than understanding pulls him forward each afternoon, as though by returning to this spot, he can keep the thread between them from breaking entirely. In the weeks that follow, his relatives try to keep him closer, but Hachi finds his way out. His route to Shibuya becomes as certain as the turning of the seasons. Rain does not stop him, nor the heavy snows of winter. The station is not just a place. It is the last point of connection between the world he knew and the one that remains. And so, the first wait becomes the first of thousands. Each day ends the same way, with a walk home in the quiet dark, carrying the hope that tomorrow's train will bring the one he longs for. But as the seasons turn, the waiting itself begins to take on a life of its own. The days in Shibuya grow long, spring has returned, carrying with it the hum of bees in the air and the drifting confetti of cherry blossoms. Petals cling to Hachi's fur as he sits by the ticket gate, eyes fixed on the stream of faces spilling from the afternoon train. Passengers step past him, their feet quick on the platform boards, their chatter bright. None belong to him. He does not move. In spring, the air smells of damp earth and the faint sweetness of blossoms. Vendors call from their stalls, selling warm buns and skewers of grilled fish to evening travellers. A young boy drops a morsel near Hachi's paws. He accepts it politely, the way a guest might in someone else's home. His true host, the one whose presence would make this place a home, never arrives. Still, he waits, as though patience itself were the season he is meant to live in. Summer leans in slowly, bringing heat that makes the stones of the platform radiate warmth into his pores. The air is thick with the scents of sweat, coal smoke, and fried octopus from the food stalls. Cicadas cry from trees just beyond the station, their chorus a relentless reminder that time is moving. Hachi shifts only to find shade beneath the station's wooden overhang. A railway worker passes, fanning himself, and gives the dog a small pat on the head. The world moves faster in summer. Trains pull in and out in quick succession. The crowd's energy sharper, more impatient, but Hachi's rhythm never changes. The train arrives, faces emerge, none are his. He watches them all, as if each stranger might be wearing the professor's voice somewhere inside them, waiting to be heard. The air cools in the evenings, but the emptiness at the gate does not. Autumn's arrival is quieter, almost shy. Leaves begin to rust along the edges, turning the maples near the station into flames of red and gold. A breeze carries them onto the tracks, where they gather in soft piles against the rails. Hachi sits in the same place he always has, but the light around him changes. A gentler, lower sun that casts him in long shadows. Passengers begin to wear heavier coats, their breaths showing in the morning. The air smells of roasted chestnuts sold by a street vendor just beyond the station. Now and then, someone brings him a scrap, a crust of bread, a sliver of fish. His body accepts these offerings, but they are not the food he is hungry for. What he craves is not in the mouth or the belly. It is the returning figure of a man with kind eyes, stepping from the train, calling his name. And then, winter. It comes as it always does, sudden and total. Snowflakes drift into his fur, their chill sinking slowly to the skin. The platform stones are slick with frost, and the air bites at exposed ears and paws. Passengers hurry more in winter, heads bent against the wind, their scarves pulled tight. The smell of coal smoke deepens, mingling with the faint metallic tang of snow. Hachi's breath puffs in small clouds before him. His fur grows heavier with winter's weight, though it does little to keep the cold from seeping into his bones. Station workers sometimes coax him toward the warmth of a nearby shed, but he always returns to the same spot before the train arrives. The cold is only part of the weight. The absence, that is the true winter he carries. Through each season, the city changes around him. Children who once walked past holding their mother's hands now run by in school uniforms. New faces appear at the platform. Old ones vanish. The rhythm of trains shifts with the timetables. Shop signs are replaced. The smell of street food changes with the fashions of taste. But Hachi's watch remains the one constant, as though he is anchored to a different clock, one that measures not hours but hope. Sometimes there are moments that feel like almosts. A passenger steps off the train wearing the same style of hat the professor once wore. Another carries a satchel like his. Footsteps match the rhythm he remembers. Hachi's ears lift, his body leans forward. But the eyes are wrong, the scent is unfamiliar, and the moment breaks apart. Still, he settles back into place. The next train already in his mind. The seasons teach him patience in their own language. Spring tells him that renewal is possible, that life returns even after loss. Summer tests the endurance of stillness in heat and discomfort. Autumn speaks of change, of letting go. Winter demands faith in what cannot be seen. Hachi learns them all, and in learning, he waits. On some days, the station is quieter. Rain blurs the edges of the world, soaking the air with a sound like endless applause. The wooden roof of the platform drips steadily. Puddles form at the edges. Hachi's fur grows heavy with water, but he remains, watching. Somewhere in the endless grey, a train horn echoes, and for a moment the sound feels close to the professor's voice. Years pass in this cycle of seasons. The station grows used to the sight. The cream-coloured Akita at the gate, unmoved by time. Travellers begin to tell the story in passing. He's been waiting for years. Some say it with admiration, others with quiet sadness. The truth is simpler than either. Hachi waits because he loves, and love does not measure years. In the warmth of spring, in the glare of summer, in the blaze of autumn, in the hush of winter, the platform remains his compass, the ticket gate his horizon. The trains keep coming. The man he waits for does not. But in Hachi's heart, the next arrival always carries the possibility. And so the seasons turn, circling endlessly around a single point of devotion. Yet as the years weave their colours across his fur, the people of Shibuya begin to notice the quiet figure at the gate. And soon, the town will carry his story alongside him. At first, he is simply there. A pale-furred dog sitting by the ticket gate, a shape that blends into the wooden posts and the daily rhythm of Shibuya Station. Commuters step around him without pause, their thoughts already ahead of them. To the day's work, to the errands awaiting at home. He is part of the background, like the benches or the timetables nailed to the wall. It is only over time that people begin to notice. The man in the dark cap who buys the same newspaper each morning sees the dog again and again, always in the same place, always facing the same gate. The woman who sells rice cakes to travelers begins to recognize the curve of his ears and the still patience in his eyes. The station attendant, whose whistle calls the trains into motion, starts to greet him softly when passing by. They do not yet know his name. The weeks become months. The dog's presence becomes as reliable as the trains themselves. More reliable, even for the trains are sometimes late, but he is always there. He does not bark. He does not beg. He simply waits, the air around him holding something unspoken, something steady. One day, a shopkeeper from the small store across the street crosses the platform with a leftover bun wrapped in paper. He sets it down near the dog's paws. The Akita accepts it politely, lowering his head in slow acknowledgement before eating. The next day, another shopkeeper brings a scrap of grilled fish. Word begins to pass between them. Have you seen the dog? He's always here. Children are the first to ask questions aloud. Why does he sit there? They wonder to their parents. Some are told. He must be waiting for his master. Others are given only a shrug. The mystery becomes part of his shape. By the time the second winter arrives, he is no longer invisible. Regular passengers nod to him as they pass. Some reach down to stroke the thick fur between his ears, their gloves brushing against his warmth before stepping into the crowd. The station master leaves a small bowl of water near the wall where he sits. Hachi, for by now his name has reached some of them, begins to receive more than food. He is offered shelter in a corner of the station when rain sweeps across the platforms. Though he will not linger indoors if a train is near, he is brushed free of snow by kind hands on heavy days. His presence, once an unnoticed fact, is now a shared familiarity, like the scent of roasted chestnuts in autumn or the echoing clang of the departure bell. Stories begin to weave themselves through the town. A man in the barber's chair tells a customer about the dog who waits for someone who never comes. A woman selling vegetables at the market repeats it to a customer who will later tell her neighbor. The tale shifts slightly each time. In one version, the master is away on business. In another, he has moved to a far-off city. The truth, quiet and unadorned, is that he is gone forever. But the people of Shibuya do not speak this to Hachi. Perhaps they cannot bear to. Hachi himself seems unchanged. The passing years do not alter the purpose in his stance. His eyes, calm and searching, watch each face as it emerges from the train. A slow, measured scan, as though he is reading the features for a secret only he will recognize. And when that secret is not found, he lowers his head, shifts his weight and waits for the next train. In the station's tea shop, travelers warm themselves with cups of steaming green tea while discussing the weather and the ever-rising cost of rice. Sometimes, their conversation turns to the dog outside. It's been 3 years now, one man says. Perhaps more, another replies. They speak of him with a mix of admiration and gentle pity, but always with respect. The rhythms of the town begin to fold his presence into their own. Vendors set aside small scraps from their morning preparation. A schoolboy, passing each day with his satchel, begins to greet Hachi with a bow as though addressing a teacher. Artists sketch him on scraps of paper. A young girl once draped a string of paper cranes around his neck, laughing as the wind lifted them. By the 4th year, his story belongs to Shibuya as much as its streets and shops do. The sight of him waiting is no longer merely a curiosity. It is a part of the town's heartbeat. People time their errands to see him. They point him out to newcomers. His vigil has moved from the realm of habit into the realm of legend, though he himself does nothing to create it. He is simply being who he is. There is something in his constancy that steadies those who see him. In a world where trains change routes and buildings rise and fall, where shops close and families move away, the Akita by the ticket gate is an anchor. His loyalty becomes a mirror, reflecting, perhaps, what people wish to find in themselves. Even so, there are still some who pass him without looking. Life in the city moves quickly, and not everyone pauses to see. But for those who do, the sight leaves a mark. They carry it with them. The image of pale fur against weathered wood, the dark eyes searching a crowd for someone who will never appear. The dog has become, in his quiet way, part of the soul of Shibuya. He is no longer just the one who waits. He is the one who reminds them all what waiting can mean. And so the town carries his vigil beside him, each kindness another thread in the tapestry of his watch. Yet it will take the pen of a stranger to carry Hachi's story beyond Shibuya's streets and into the heart of a nation. The winter of 1932 is cold, the kind that settles deep into the bones and lingers. Morning frost glazes the edges of the platform at Shibuya Station, catching the weak sunlight in a pale shimmer. Commuters move briskly, scarves drawn high, breaths puffing in the air like small, fleeting clouds. Among them, the familiar figure of a cream-colored Akita sits in his place by the ticket gate, still as a carved figure, eyes searching each face that emerges from the train. It is on one of these mornings that a man named Hirokichi Sato steps onto the platform. He is a reporter for the Asahi Shimbun, one of Japan's most respected newspapers. His coat collar is turned up against the wind, his hands buried deep in his pockets. He has not come here looking for a story, not exactly. Yet as his gaze falls upon the waiting dog, a quiet pull begins to work within him. Sato has passed through Shibuya before. He has heard, in passing, the murmured tales from vendors and passengers. The dog who waits for someone who will never come home. The words had struck him as charming, even curious, but until now they were just another piece of small-town lore in the midst of Tokyo's endless noise. Today, standing only a few feet away, the reality feels different. Hachi does not fidget. He does not turn to every movement or sound. Instead, he watches with a still patience that feels ancient, as though his vigil belongs not only to his own life, but to something older, something beyond him. Sato waits, observing. When the afternoon train pulls in and its passengers spill onto the platform, he sees the dog's ears lift, his body lean forward in that subtle way of hope. But again, no familiar figure steps through the gate. Slowly, the dog settles back into place, as if resetting the clock until the next arrival. The image stays with Sato as he moves on with his day. That night, in the quiet hum of the press office, he cannot shake it. He begins to ask questions, small ones at first, to shopkeepers near the station, to station attendants who have worked there for years. He pieces together the truth. The dog's name is Hachi. His master was Professor Hidesaburō Ueno of Tokyo Imperial University, and since the professor's sudden death in 1925, the dog has come to the station nearly every afternoon to meet the train. 7 years of waiting. The details are simple, but their weight is not. In a city that is shifting toward modernity, where electric lights burn away the night, and the rush of machines drowns the stillness of older ways. Here is a figure who embodies something untouched by time: loyalty, constancy, a promise kept beyond the limits of life itself. Sato begins to write. His words are careful, almost reverent. He describes the way Hachi sits, the way his gaze holds the platform as if guarding it. He tells the professor's story, not in the language of tragedy, but in the quiet dignity of devotion. He writes of the seasons that have passed over the station, the petals of spring, the dust of summer, the gold of autumn, the snow of winter, all with Hachi at his post. When the article runs in Asahi Shimbun, it is as though a stone has been dropped into still water. Letters arrive at the newspaper within days, from readers in villages and cities alike. Some write to express admiration, others to send small offerings of food or blankets. Many write to say that they, too, have known the ache of waiting for someone who never came home. Hachi's name spreads far beyond Shibuya. Families speak of him at the dinner table. Children repeat the story in schoolyards, their eyes wide at the thought of such unwavering patience. Farmers in distant prefectures hear the tale and imagine the dog sitting under Tokyo's grey winter sky, holding a vigil they have never seen but can picture perfectly. And then the people begin to come, not just commuters on their daily routes, but strangers from across the city and beyond. They step off trains not to travel elsewhere, but to stand quietly at the edge of the platform and watch the dog themselves. Some bring bits of meat or rice cakes wrapped in paper. Others bring nothing, only the desire to witness. Hachi accepts each gesture with the same quiet courtesy, his gaze always drifting back toward the gate. Shibuya Station changes in small ways. The station staff learn to navigate the small crowd that often forms in the afternoons. Vendors notice a rise in business from the curious visitors. The air feels different now, charged with a kind of shared guardianship. It is as though the entire town has become a custodian of the vigil. Sato himself visits again, not as a reporter this time, but simply as a man who has been moved. He stands near the gate, hands in his coat pockets, and watches as Hachi rises at the sound of an approaching train. For a moment, Sato imagines the scene differently. The professor stepping onto the platform, the dog bounding forward, the years of waiting dissolving into one joyful meeting. But the train arrives, passengers pour out, and the moment remains only in the mind. The truth of Hachi's vigil is not in its ending, but in its endurance. By the end of that year, the dog has become more than a story. He is a living symbol, not just of one man's loyalty to his master, but of an ideal cherished deeply in Japanese culture. Chugi, the unwavering fidelity that honors a bond without bending. His watch has transformed from a private grief into a public testament, and though Hachi himself remains unaware of his fame, the circle of those who care for him grows wider with each passing day. The pen had carried his story into every corner of the nation, but for Hachi, nothing had changed. The gate still stood before him, the train still called, and the one he waited for still did not come. Yet in the quiet beyond the platform, the people's love began to gather, preparing to offer him more than words alone. The article has done its work. In the weeks and months after Hirokichi Saito's words spread across the pages of Asahi Shimbun, the name Hachi becomes a gentle echo in homes across Japan. It travels in the hands of postmen, in the murmurs of families gathered at evening, in the quiet rustle of newspaper sheets read by firelight. And soon, The echo begins to return to Shibuya. It comes in the form of gifts. A man from Niigata arrives on the morning train, carrying a parcel wrapped in cloth. Inside is dried fish, neatly tied with string. A woman from Kyoto sends a thick woolen blanket, embroidered with her own hands. The thread still carrying the faint scent of the cedar chest it was stored in. Children from a school in Nagano write a letter together, their careful characters telling him he is a hero, though they have never met him. Each offering is placed gently at his side, sometimes with a pat, sometimes with only a bowed head. The gifts are as varied as the people who bring them: rice crackers, roasted chestnuts, small tins of meat, even hand-sewn collars in bright colours. The station staff keep a small corner in the office for the food, sharing what Hachi does not eat with other dogs in the neighbourhood. Yet, for all the kindness, Hachi's routine remains unchanged. Morning comes, he finds a quiet place in the shade. Afternoon comes, he walks to the gate. The crowds may swell, the faces may be new, but his gaze never wavers from the direction the professor once came. The fame that has grown around him is invisible to him, like wind passing over water. He does not know that his photograph has been printed in papers beyond Tokyo, that strangers speak his name as though he were an old friend. He knows only the rhythm of train arrivals, the soft thunder of footsteps, the way the air shifts when hope rises. Some visitors linger, hoping for a moment of recognition. A wag of the tail, a glance that feels personal. They sometimes receive it, but often they do not. His attention is not theirs to claim. It belongs to a single memory and to the possibility, however slim, that it might one day return. The townspeople notice this. He's loyal to only one, they say with quiet admiration. And in those words, there is no envy, only respect. Winter brings heavier blankets and heartier food. Dried persimmons, bundles of sweet potatoes baked until their skins wrinkle and split. Spring brings fresh flowers, sometimes tucked into his collar, their petals trembling as he breathes. Summer offers bowls of cool water, set in the shade, and autumn delivers the smell of roasted chestnuts carried in paper cones by travellers who stop to share. Once, a wealthy merchant arrives with a fine leather leash, polished to a dark shine. He offers to take Hachi to his home in the countryside, where there will be gardens and comfort, far from the soot and clatter of the city. The offer is kind, but the station staff know it is useless. Hachi would only find his way back. The gate is his garden now, the sound of trains, his music. For the people who come to see him, the station takes on a feeling of quiet ceremony. They stand a little apart, watching him watch the crowd. Some whisper to each other, as if loud voices might disturb the weight of his vigil. Others simply stand in silence, hands in pockets, looking toward the gate, as though trying to imagine the man he waits for. Even the gifts themselves begin to feel symbolic. A blanket is not just warmth, it is an embrace. A tin of meat is not just food, it is gratitude. Each act of giving says, "We see you, we honor you, we will help you keep your watch." But Hachi, though he accepts these tokens, remains unmoved by the comfort they offer. Comfort is not what he waits for. He waits for the one thing no visitor can give. In the early evenings, when the rush has passed, and the platform is quiet again, the gifts are gathered away. The vendors close their shutters, the lamps are lit, and the station settles into the softer hum of night. Hachi curls on his haunches, his nose tucked beneath his tail, the blanket draped over him by a gentle hand earlier in the day. outside the wooden eaves. The city moves on, streetcars rattling, bicycle bells chiming, voices fading into alleys. To those who pass in the dark, he is a stillness in the midst of motion, a pale shape beneath the glow of a single hanging lamp. A reminder, perhaps, that not all journeys are measured in miles. And in this stillness, the gifts keep coming. From across Japan, strangers will continue to step off the train at Shibuya with parcels in their arms, looking for the dog they have read about. They will find him where they expect. By the gate, eyes fixed ahead, the crowd flowing around him like water around stone. And they will leave their offerings, knowing that even if he never looks at them, the act of giving itself has meaning. Because in Hachi's unchanging vigil, people see a truth that feels rare in their own shifting lives. That some promises, once made, are never broken. And so the gifts arrive, as steady as the trains, yet none can alter the path of his watch. But time moves in both loyalty and in years, and soon the mark of age will begin to touch even the most steadfast of hearts. The years have a way of settling in slowly, like the first flakes of winter snow drifting down over the city. No one notices their quiet arrival until they have already woven themselves into the streets, into the air, into the hair and fur of those who keep to their rituals. Hachi does not mark the years as humans do. He does not turn pages on a calendar, nor count the anniversaries of that first day he sat on the platform without the professor returning. But the signs of time are there nonetheless, not in numbers, but in the steady changes of his own body and in the shifting face of the world around him. His once quick stride now carries a slow deliberation. The young dog who once darted ahead to greet the professor has given way to an elder whose paws press more gently into the stones. The fur along his muzzle has turned pale, a frost that no spring thaw will melt. His eyes, once clear as a mountain stream, now hold the faint cloudiness of age, yet they remain fixed in their purpose. The station itself wears the years differently. In the mornings, the crowd has grown larger, the faces more varied. Tokyo hums with new energy. More electric lights, more motorcars, more voices from faraway prefectures. The trains have changed their music. Some are sleeker now, their whistles sharper, their carriages painted in fresh colours. The shop by the ticket gate has been renovated, its wooden counter replaced by a brighter stall. But still, in the midst of all this renewal, there is the familiar figure, a cream-furred Akita sitting in his place, as constant as the rails themselves. Some mornings, his joints ache. The walk from his caretaker's home to Shibuya takes longer. Sometimes, the wind cuts through the narrow streets in a way that makes him pause, gathering his strength before he steps onward. Yet, without fail, he arrives. Afternoon after afternoon, he takes his seat, as though he has always belonged to that small square of platform. By now, the station staff know him as an old friend. One of the porters, grey-haired himself, has taken to keeping a small blanket in a back room, laying it out for Hachi on the colder days. A fruit vendor sets aside a slice of steamed sweet potato when the air turns crisp. On rainy days, a shopkeeper props an old paper umbrella to shield him from the worst of the drizzle. These are small kindnesses, unspoken but deeply felt, the quiet gestures people give to those they have accepted as part of their world. Children who once played near the station now walk past in school uniforms, taller than before. They wave at him in passing, some pausing to pat his head, recalling the stories their parents told of the dog who waits. Newcomers to the city stop to ask about him and are met with the same answer: he is Hachi, he is waiting. Sometimes, as the sun lowers and shadows stretch across the platform, Hachi closes his eyes for a few moments. In that drifting half-sleep, he hears the footsteps that memory has carved into his mind, the particular weight and rhythm of a man he once walked beside. The sound is always clear at first, but it fades before it reaches him, like a train that passes through without stopping. And yet, he does not give in to weariness. Age may slow him, but it cannot unbind the thread that ties him to his post. Loyalty, once planted deep, grows into something that no passing year can uproot. The people of Shibuya take quiet comfort in him. In a city that changes so quickly, he is proof that some things remain. His presence is not just a story now. It is a living piece of the station's own rhythm. The sound of the ticket punch, the hiss of the brakes, the murmur of evening commuters, and the soft, steady breathing of the dog who waits. There are days when the weather seems determined to keep him away. Snow drapes itself over the city, muting the world into white silence. The air stings, and the stones grow slick beneath his paws. Still, the watchers on the platform see him come, slow but certain, and take his place as if nothing in the world could hold him back. On such days, the commuters move a little closer, shielding him from the wind as they wait for their own trains. In summer, the heat shimmers off the tracks and the scent of hot tar rises from the road outside. Flies buzz lazily in the thick air. Hachi pants in the shade of the ticket gate, his tongue curled, but his eyes never leaving the space beyond the turnstiles where passengers emerge. He asks for nothing. He demands nothing. His presence is its own quiet act of faith. A faith not in time, but in return. And though the world changes around him, there is one thing that never does. The way the crowd parts slightly when he walks to his place, as if acknowledging a figure who belongs to another order of time entirely. There is a grace in this aging vigil. A decade has passed since the professor last stepped onto this platform, and still Hachi's path has not wavered. To those who know his story, he is no longer just a dog. He is the keeper of a promise, the living memory of a bond that once drew a man and an animal together in simple companionship. On certain evenings, as the lanterns glow warm against the gathering dusk, it is possible to see him silhouetted there, motionless, steadfast, while the city rushes on. The trains arrive and depart, announcements echo, laughter rises and falls, and Hachi, in the middle of it all, remains. In this way, time passes, not in sudden leaps, but in the slow, even breathing of a faithful heart. The station grows older, and so does he. Yet in the quiet exchange between a dog and a place, nothing feels diminished. If anything, the years have deepened the meaning of his weight, etching it into the very stones he sits upon. And so, as the weight of years settles into his bones, the path to Shibuya remains unbroken. A familiar road his paws will always find. But time, relentless and unyielding, is drawing nearer to the day when each step will cost him more, and when the air itself will carry the sharpness of the winter to come. The winter of 1934 arrives without mercy. It begins as a brittle edge in the air, a quiet warning in the early mornings, and then, without pause, it descends in full, snow drifting into the alleys, wind slicing between the houses, the sun itself paling under a veil of white. Hachi feels the change not just in the weather, but in his own body. The chill no longer sits on his fur like a passing inconvenience. It seeps inward, finding the spaces between his ribs, the hollow beneath his shoulders. His breathing, once steady, now comes in slow, shallow measures, as though each breath must be coaxed into being. His coat, still thick, no longer hides the sharpness of his frame. The weight he once carried in muscle and youth has melted away, leaving him light. Too light. The muscles in his legs tremble after long walks, and there is a new heaviness in the simple act of rising to his feet. And yet, each day, as the afternoon leans toward the hour of the train's arrival, he goes. The path to Shibuya has become his own narrow pilgrimage. He moves slower now, his paws pressing into the thin crust of snow with care. The sounds of the city reach him through the muffling cold. The distant rumble of a streetcar, the slap of gaiter sandals on stone, the whistle of the station faint and far. He walks with the determination of one who knows the way by heart, each turn and crossing etched into his memory so deeply that no weakness can erase it. Some days the walk takes twice as long. Passers-by notice him more now. The old dog with the pale eyes, his breath steaming in the frosted air. Some kneel to pat his head, murmuring encouragement. Others shake their heads softly, half in wonder, half in pity. When he reaches the station, there is a place waiting for him. The porters have grown used to seeing him arrive later than before, and they make small allowances for his age. A folded blanket sometimes appears on the platform, discreetly placed so he can rest without the bite of the cold stone. A station worker brings him warm broth in a shallow dish, steam curling into the air before the wind steals it away. But comfort is not what keeps him here. The crowd could wrap him in the thickest wool and feed him the richest meals. And still, when the train doors open, his gaze would lift, searching, always searching, for that one face. Winter presses on, and the snow falls thicker. On the coldest days, his fur gathers flakes that melt slowly, dampening the skin beneath. He shivers, but does not leave. The trains come and go, the rhythm of their arrival and departure as familiar to him as a heartbeat. He feels the illness in the quiet hours when the station empties and the wind moves unchallenged across the platform. There is an ache in his chest that does not ease, and sometimes, when he tries to stand too quickly, his legs hesitate beneath him. Still, the moment the sound of an approaching train reaches his ears, something inside him steadies. His head lifts. His ears turn toward the track. It is not hope in the way humans measure it, not a calculated belief that the professor will return, but a deeper, wordless instinct as old as his bond. The place where he waits is not just where they parted. It is where they belonged together. To abandon it would be to loosen the last thread between them. In the evenings, the lantern light pools on the wet stones, and Hachi's shadow stretches long beside him. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifts from a nearby vendor, mixing with the smell of snow and coal smoke. People pass, some pausing to greet him, others moving on with hurried steps, shoulders hunched against the wind. The illness tightens its grip. His breaths sometimes come with a faint wheeze, and the once effortless leap onto the raised platform now requires a pause, a gathering of will. The station staff, noticing his struggle, begin lifting him gently when they see him approach, as though he were an honored elder who should not have to strain himself. And still, he stays until the last evening train departs. Only then does he rise, stiffly, carefully, and begin the walk back through the dark streets, the cold moon overhead. The road feels longer than it once did, but he moves with the same quiet resolve. Each day of illness is another day kept at his post, another defiance against the slow erasure of time. His body may be surrendering, but his presence is unbroken. The waiting is not just an act. It has become the shape of his life. The steady note that has played since the day the professor's footsteps ceased to echo here. In the final weeks of the year, the cold deepens to a biting clarity. The air stings the lungs with each inhale, and the snow on the rooftops gleams blue under the early twilight. On such days, the crowd around him swells, as if to stand nearer in a silent vigil of their own. No one says it aloud, but they know. The years have been long, and the winter is harsh. The dog they have grown to love is not invincible. His vigil will not be eternal, but as long as he walks this path, as long as his paws find the platform, they will meet him there, and see in his waiting something they cannot name, but deeply understand. The winter does not loosen its hold, and each breath costs him more than the last. Yet tomorrow, as the station clock draws near to the hour, he will rise once more and take the road to Shibuya, unaware that the last steps of his journey are already beginning. March 8, 1935 begins without ceremony. The sky hangs heavy above Tokyo, the kind of grey that swallows colour and softens sound. Rain falls in a slow drizzle, weaving mist into the air, so that even the far edges of the streets blur and fade. The season has not yet turned. Winter clings in the damp chill that seeps into the bones. Hachi rises with effort. His body, thinned and tired, feels the weight of each movement. The joints ache. The breath comes shallow. But there is no question in his mind. The path must be taken. For more than 9 years, the road from his caretaker's home to Shibuya has been as much a part of him as his heartbeat. Today is no different. He steps forward, paws pressing into wet earth and stone, tail low but steady. His fur is slicked by the drizzle almost at once, small rivulets finding their way down his sides. The city stirs around him. Shopkeepers pull up shutters with a metallic rattle. Bicycles glide past with wheels splashing through puddles. The scent of rain mixes with the smoke of early cooking fires and with the distant tang of coal from the station's locomotives. It is a quieter morning than most. The rain keeps many indoors, and those who are out hurry along with heads bent beneath umbrellas. Still, a few greet him as he passes. A man in a wool coat nods, lips curving into the faintest smile. A young boy pauses to bow before his mother urges him onward. Hachi walks at his own pace. He has no train to catch, no meeting to attend. His task is simpler, older, and deeper. To be at the place where his master once returned and might return again. By the time he reaches Shibuya Station, the drizzle has thickened into a mist that clings to everything it touches. The familiar sounds meet him. The rumble of trains over wet tracks, the muffled voices of commuters, the hiss of steam escaping a vent. The platform, slick with rain, glistens in the dim light. He takes his place. Always the same spot, near the ticket gate where the crowd parts of passengers emerge. His eyes lift toward the arriving train, scanning the blur of coats, hats, and umbrellas. He waits without impatience. The minutes stretch, the crowd ebbs and flows, and still he holds his post. To those who pass, he is as constant as the clock above the platform. Some pause to offer him scraps or a kind word. Others simply meet his gaze and walk on. His presence is no longer a curiosity. It is part of the station itself, a fixture as familiar as the timetable on the wall. The day moves slowly. The drizzle never stops. By afternoon, the damp has settled into his fur, reaching his skin. The cold bites, but he does not shiver. His breathing is slower now, each exhale a pale cloud. The sounds of the station swell and recede like the tide. The rain makes the air smell of stone and metal, mingled with the faint sweetness of chestnuts roasting at a nearby stall. Those who know him well notice he moves less, his head lowering more often to rest. A station worker crouches beside him, placing a small cloth over his back. Another brings a dish of warm broth. He accepts neither, his gaze fixed beyond the gate. Evening draws near. Lanterns glow against the damp air, their light soft and golden. The last commuters hurry through, shoes clicking on wet stone. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the station, a train whistle sounds long and low, the tone carrying far into the rainy dusk. Hachi does not rise to meet it. Sometime after the rush has passed, he leaves the platform. His steps are slow, deliberate, as he walks along the narrow street beside the station. The rain is lighter now, almost a mist again, and the lamps along the road flicker faintly in the gathering dark. It is here, not far from the place he has kept for nearly a decade, that he stops. The street is quiet. Water trickles into the gutters. A single train passes behind him, its wheels singing on the wet rails. There is no struggle, no sound, only stillness. His body rests where it is, as if he has paused mid-journey, caught between the road and the platform. To those who will find him in the morning, it will seem as though he was on his way once more to the gate, to watch the crowd for that one beloved face. Word spreads quickly. By nightfall, whispers have reached homes and shops. Hachi is gone. In the morning, the news is certain. People gather, some in silence, others with quiet tears. The station feels different, the air heavier, as if a part of its very heart has been removed. The space where he sat is empty now, and yet it feels occupied. By memory, by devotion, by something unseen but undeniable. Those who pass through Shibuya in the days to come will still glance toward the ticket gate out of habit, half expecting to see him there. Some will pause, feeling the absence more keenly than they can say. For the people of the station, for the city, and for all who had come to know his story, Hachi's passing is not just the loss of a dog. It is the closing of a chapter that had, for 10 years, been a quiet testament to loyalty, the kind that expects nothing in return, that holds steady in the face of time, that stands even when there is no reward but the act itself. March 8 becomes a date remembered, not for the rain or the greyness of the day, but for the way a dog's devotion outlasted the years, and ended only when his own time was done. And though his body is gone, the story does not fade. In the days that follow, the people of Shibuya speak of him in soft tones, as if the sound of his name must be handled gently. Strangers share memories of passing him on the platform, of offering him food, of seeing him lift his head each time a train pulled in. Some say the rain that day seemed fitting, a sky weeping quietly over the city. Others remember the lantern light glinting on the wet stone, as if the station itself had lit candles for him. But all agree on this. Hachi kept his vigil to the very end. The station now holds a silence where his soft footsteps once echoed, a stillness that lingers in the corners of the platform. Yet in the days ahead, that silence will be filled, not with his presence, but with the voices of a nation mourning a friend, carrying his story far beyond the rain-soaked streets of Shibuya. The morning after Hachi's passing, Shibuya wakes to an emptiness that feels almost physical. The platform where he sat is bare. The small space near the ticket gate, where commuters once adjusted their steps to avoid disturbing him, lies open and quiet. Rainwater glistens on the stone, as if the sky itself had wept through the night. The station's staff speak of him in hushed tones, voices carrying the softness reserved for family. But even before they finish their first duties of the day, the news has already begun to move outward, first through conversations, then through ink. A reporter from one of Tokyo's daily papers writes the story in measured lines. Hachiko, the faithful Akita of Shibuya, has passed away after nearly a decade of waiting for his late master. The piece is simple, without embellishment, yet it strikes something deep in its readers. By afternoon, other papers follow. The Asahi Shimbun prints a photograph. Hachi on the platform, fur silvered with age, eyes set on the arriving train. From there, the story travels far. In fishing villages along the northern coast, men return from the sea to find the news tacked to notice boards outside markets. In the green valleys of Kyushu, farmers read about him over bowls of steaming rice, the early sun falling over their shoulders. In the bustle of Osaka, shopkeepers pause between customers to share the article with neighbors. Letters begin to arrive in Tokyo. At first, they come from the surrounding wards, then from prefectures far beyond the city. Some are addressed to the station, others to the local authorities, and still others simply marked to Hachi. Many are written by people who had never seen him in life. One letter speaks of a soldier who kept the clipping folded in his uniform, saying it reminded him of home. Another comes from a schoolgirl in Kyoto who writes in careful script that she will tell her grandchildren about the dog who waited. An elderly couple in Hokkaido encloses a small photograph of their own Akita with a note saying, "He reminds us of your Hachi." The words in these letters carry more than sorrow. They carry recognition. For in Hachi's story, people see not just a dog's loyalty, but an echo of virtues they hold close. Patience, devotion, endurance. These are qualities Japan has long cherished, woven into its literature, its history, its daily customs. And here they are, embodied not in a hero of legend or a figure of politics, but in a quiet animal who asked for nothing but to keep a place for someone he loved. In the cities, small gatherings form. Commuters who once passed him daily stand together near the ticket gate, speaking softly of how he used to lift his head at the sound of the evening train. Families bring flowers to the spot where he waited, placing them against the wall as though leaving offerings at a shrine. Children, too young to remember the professor he waited for, still know his name and leave bits of food as tokens of affection. Newspapers begin to publish reflections and tributes. Editorials speak of him as a living poem, a reminder that constancy is not bound by time or species. One writer describes the scene many imagine. The professor stepping from a train in another world, greeted by a dog whose wait is finally over. The image spreads quietly, becoming a kind of shared dream. Schools mention him in morning assemblies. Teachers tell the story to their students not as mere history, but as a lesson in character. Hachi's vigil becomes a kind of moral parable, one that needs no translation, no complex explanation. Even those who had once thought little of the dog at the station find themselves pausing at the thought of his absence. A merchant who had passed him every morning on the way to open his shop says to a customer, "It will be strange, won't it, not seeing him there?" A young office worker, who had only recently moved to Tokyo, remarks to a colleague that the station feels different now, as if it has lost a part of its rhythm. In the weeks that follow, Hachi's image appears more frequently in print. Photographs from earlier years. Him as a young dog, him seated on the platform in the snow, him beside station workers, are reprinted as keepsakes. Some families cut them from the paper and slip them into albums alongside their own cherished memories. The grief is quiet, but it is everywhere. It is in the nod of recognition when two strangers speak of him. It is in the way people slow their steps near the platform, even with no reason to stop. It is in the way his name, spoken aloud, carries both the weight of loss and the warmth of remembrance. And as the weeks pass, his story settles deeper into the country's collective memory. No longer only the dog of Shibuya, he becomes the dog of Japan, a living embodiment of the values the nation holds close. His years of waiting are told not just as a tale of devotion, but as a measure of the quiet strength that endures in the everyday. For loyalty is not only in the grand gesture, a sacrifice made in a single moment of courage. It is also in the small, repeated acts. The walk taken each day to the same place, the patient gaze turned toward the crowd, the refusal to give up even when the world offers no reward. Hachi's life has shown this truth with a clarity that no speech could match. By spring, the rains have washed the streets clean, but the memory of March 8 remains unshaken. The flowers at the station, though wilted, are replaced by new ones. The letters, still arriving, are carefully kept. And the people of Shibuya, whether they knew him well or only in passing, speak of him with a fondness that time will not erase. And so the story that began with a simple walk to the station now belongs to the whole of Japan, carried in hearts and in memory. In the years ahead, they will seek to honor him in bronze, so that even in stillness, he might keep his watch. The year is 1934. Shibuya Station hums as it always has. The clatter of shoes across stone, the clipped calls of conductors, the sigh of doors opening to release another tide of faces. Among them, the figure of a dog waits in his familiar place, gaze steady, tail still. The story of his vigil has long since spilled beyond the ticket gates, beyond Tokyo, beyond even Japan. Hachi is no longer only a dog, he is an emblem. It begins quietly, as such things do. A small group of people, station workers, shopkeepers, a professor's former students, decide that the waiting dog should be honored in a way that will last. They speak in the back rooms of cafes, in the pauses between customers, their words full of that gentle urgency that comes from knowing a moment will not stay forever. A sculptor is commissioned. The task is not simply to create a likeness, but to distill loyalty itself into metal. In the studio, clay takes shape beneath the artist's hands. He studies photographs and sketches, but most of all, he visits the station. He watches Hachi's posture, how he sits, how his ears tilt at the sound of an arriving train. There is no theatrical pose here, no heroic leap or fierce snarl, just the quiet strength of a dog who knows his place and has chosen never to leave it. The sculptor understands. The statue must not shout, it must listen. Spring drapes the city in blossoms by the time the work is done. The foundry breathes fire into the mold, and molten bronze pours in, filling the shape that was once only clay. When the casting is complete, the statue gleams. A young Akita in his prime, head held in gentle attention, paws resting firmly on the earth. The light catches on his rounded ears and the curve of his tail, making him seem warm, almost breathing. The unveiling takes place on a bright April day. Crowds gather in front of Shibuya Station, spilling across the pavement, children perched on their parents' shoulders for a better view. Hachi himself is there, led gently through the throng by a station attendant. Some in the crowd are startled. The living dog and the bronze dog stand together, one in motion, one in stillness, their forms nearly identical. The speeches are brief. A local official speaks of loyalty and devotion, of how these virtues, though quiet, form the true backbone of a nation. When the cloth is pulled away, a murmur rises from the crowd. Cameras click. A few women dab at their eyes. Hachi gazes up at the statue as if meeting a friend. Perhaps he sees nothing remarkable in it. After all, his attention is fixed, as always, on the station gates. From that day forward, two Hachis keep watch over Shibuya, one of flesh and fur, one of bronze and silence. Travelers pass them daily. Some stop to bow or take photographs. Others hurry by without a glance. But whether noticed or not, the bronze dog holds his post through rain, sun, and falling leaves. Yet the years ahead are not gentle ones. By the end of the decade, the air in Tokyo feels heavier. Military banners flutter where once there had been festival lanterns. Newspapers speak in tones both urgent and grim. War creeps into every corner of life. Rationing uniforms, farewells whispered at train platforms. When the Pacific conflict swells to its height, the government issues a call for metal, bronze, copper, iron. All are needed for the machinery of war. One by one, bells vanish from temple courtyards. Railings disappear from public gardens, and statues are pried from their plinths. The order comes for the bronze dog at Shibuya. It happens quietly, early in the morning before the rush of commuters. A team of workers dismantles the statue, wrapping chains around its frame. The square feels strangely empty once it is gone. Only the stone base remains, bare and mute, like a page torn from a story. The living Hachi is no longer there to notice. He has been gone since 1935. But the absence lingers for those who knew. The metal is melted, folded into the anonymous mass of war production. No one can say what became of it, whether it was shaped into parts for ships, or artillery, or some other fragment of the machinery that devoured so much. In those years, loyalty meant something different. Not the patient watch at a station gate, but endurance through scarcity, through loss. When peace returns in 1945, it comes slowly, like dawn creeping over a ravaged landscape. Shibuya Station is still standing, though scarred. In the years that follow, life begins to knit itself back together. New shops open, children laugh on the streets, trains once again carry not soldiers, but families and workers. It is in this climate of renewal that the thought returns. Hachi should come back, not in flesh, but in bronze. A new sculptor takes up the task, working from old photographs and the memories of those who saw both the dog and the first statue. This time, the work feels not only like commemoration, but restoration, a way of stitching a familiar thread back into the fabric of the city. In 1948, the second statue is unveiled. The square is once again full of people, some of them older now, their faces lined, carrying memories of both war and peace. As the cloth falls away, there is a murmur of recognition, as if a long-absent friend had stepped back into view. The bronze Hachi stands once more, his posture unchanged, his gaze still fixed on the place where the trains arrive. And so he remains, year after year, as Tokyo grows around him. Neon signs rise, traffic thickens, buildings push higher. Yet the bronze dog keeps his vigil. He does not age, does not tire, does not falter. The eternal watcher of a moment that passed long ago but refuses to fade. In the soft light of early morning, when the square is empty, it is easy to imagine the echo of real paws against the pavement. Bronze may not breathe, but it remembers. And far beyond Tokyo, the story of this patient figure begins to travel. Carried by photographs, by articles, by the quiet astonishment of strangers, the bronze watcher is no longer just Shibuya's. He belongs to the world. It begins not with a ship or a plane, but with paper. A single photograph, printed in a Tokyo newspaper, catches the light on the desk of a correspondent for a foreign press agency. In the grainy black and white, a dog sits at the edge of the station gates, his posture both humble and unyielding. The caption is brief, almost casual, but something in the image refuses to stay silent. The reporter copies the story into English, smoothing it into the shape his readers will understand. A faithful companion, waiting for a master who will never return. Within weeks, it appears in small columns in London, New York, Sydney. The details shift in the retelling. Some say the man was a soldier, others a fisherman, but the heart of the story beats steadily, unchanged. In living rooms far from Japan, people pause over their morning tea or coffee to read of this dog who keeps his station. Some clip the article and pin it to the kitchen wall. Others tell the tale aloud at the dinner table, their voices softening as they imagine the seasons turning around a figure that never moves. Letters arrive in Tokyo from abroad, from school children in Canada, from pensioners in France, from farmers in the Midwest. They ask if the dog still waits if someone feeds him, if he has shelter in the snow. They send coins, scarves, even a small parcel of biscuits, though many will never reach him. It is as if the world, wary of its own fractures, has found in Hachi a rare place where devotion is still whole. Over the decades, the story changes mediums as if trying on new clothes. In Japan, children's books bloom with painted cherry blossoms and snowflakes falling onto Hachi's back. The pages smell faintly of school libraries, paper dust and varnished floors, where young hands turn them over slowly, tracing the curve of his tail. In the West, similar books appear. The settings alter just enough for local readers, but the waiting always at the center. Filmmakers, too, are drawn to the tale. First come documentaries, grainy and spare, spliced together with newsreel footage and the memories of elderly Tokyo residents. Then, decades later, full-length films appear, one in Japan, another in Hollywood, draping the story in the soft glow of dramatization. On the screen, Hachi runs through fields, barks with joy, and curls at the feet of his master. The waiting is still there, but now it is framed by swelling music designed to bring tears just as the lights come up. And yet, for all the embellishments, the core remains unbent. A dog chooses to keep his place, and nothing, not weather, not strangers, not the long ache of years, can unseat him. Historians of culture sometimes speak of archetypes, shapes of story that the human heart recognizes before the mind even names them. The faithful animal belongs to this ancient lineage. It echoes the Greek hound Argos, who waited for Odysseus to come home from war. It hums alongside the stone dogs that guard temples and gates across Asia. Hachi steps into this lineage without ever knowing it, his vigil a bridge between the mythic and the real. As the years roll forward, the world changes around the story. Telegrams give way to telephones, telephones to computers, computers to glowing screens that fit into a pocket. The photograph of the dog at Shibuya is scanned, copied, shared in an instant to millions. A click replaces the slow turning of a newspaper page, but the effect is the same. A pause, a quiet intake of breath. An unspoken wish to be that loyal to someone. Travelers arriving in Tokyo from abroad often place the statue at the top of their itinerary. It is not a temple or a palace, not a relic from a dynasty, but still they come, backpackers, honeymooners, retirees. Some bring flowers. Some crouch beside the bronze to take a photograph. The station swirls with commuters who have no time to stop, but in the little square around the statue, there is always a kind of hush. For many, seeing Hachi's likeness in person feels oddly familiar, like meeting a pen pal after years of correspondence. They have carried him in their minds from the moment they first read of his vigil. Now, standing beside the bronze, they find the weight of the story pressing gently on their chest. Not in sadness, but in recognition. The story has crossed not only space, but language. It has been told in Japanese, English, French, Russian, Mandarin, and dozens more. Some versions keep to the facts with quiet precision, others wander into fable, adding conversations between man and dog, or ending with a reunion on a sunlit platform in another world. Each retelling carries its own weather, but all draw from the same spring. Why does it endure? Perhaps because it asks for nothing in return. In an age where love is often measured in what it can extract, Hachi's loyalty is stripped bare of transaction. It is love without a ledger, devotion without a finish line. And so, year after year, somewhere in the world, someone opens a book or presses play on a film and meets the dog from Shibuya for the first time. They watch him sit, watch the trains come and go, watch the seasons turn. They feel the space between hope and grief, that narrow bridge where love chooses to remain, even when the waiting seems endless. By the time the credits roll or the last page is turned, they may never step foot in Tokyo, may never hear the station's real bells or smell the scent of rain on its stones. But they will carry something of it with them, tucked quietly into the folds of memory. And in that memory, many will imagine an ending the story never had. A platform bathed in light, a figure stepping down from the train, and a dog bounding forward at last. It is there, in that imagined meeting, that the next chapter quietly begins. Some endings are not recorded in ledgers or photographs. They live instead in the space between fact and longing, in that quiet territory where memory and hope take hands. For Hachi, whose life was measured in arrivals, without the one he sought, the mind refuses to accept that the story closed on a rainy March day in 1935. We picture something else. A platform washed in light, not the fluorescent glow of a station's lamps, but the steady warmth of a sun that never fades. The air is still, touched only by the distant hum of an approaching train. There is no clock here, no schedule to keep, only the sound of steel on rails drawing closer. He sits, just as he did for nearly a decade, paws neatly aligned, ears forward. But there is no strain in his posture now, no tightness in the chest from cold, no hunger gnawing at his ribs. The waiting feels different, not heavy, not uncertain, but charged with a joy he cannot name. The train glides into view. It is not any train he has known. No suit, no clanging brakes, but it moves with a grace that feels familiar. The doors open, and from the stillness inside, a single figure steps down. Professor Ueno. The lines in his face are softened, his shoulders relaxed. He carries nothing. No satchel of papers, no umbrella against the rain. Only the smile of someone coming home. For a heartbeat, both man and dog remain still, as if testing the moment's reality. Then the space between them collapses. Hachi runs. His paws strike the platform in a rhythm that echoes the pounding of the heart. The professor kneels, and the world narrows to this point of reunion, hands in fur against cloth, a breath drawn in and never released. There is no crowd here, no noise, no departure, only the embrace that undoes all the days of absence. For those who loved the story in life, this is the image they keep. It appears in paintings, in the closing pages of children's books, in the whispered telling from parent to child at bedtime. They omit the years of hunger, the scars from street fights, the creeping ache of age. In this telling, the wait does not end with stillness on a sidewalk, but with motion, the bounding run toward the one who was always meant to return. In many cultures, there is a belief that such meetings happen beyond the visible world. The Celts spoke of a green field where companions meet again. Some faiths promise gates of pearl where nothing cherished is lost. In Japan, the Shinto idea of mitama, the spirit, holds that bonds formed in life are threads carried into eternity. It is easy to imagine that somewhere, beyond time and train schedules, the thread between Hachi and Ueno still pulls taut. But even if one sets aside heaven, there is the heaven of memory. Memory does not need to obey the calendar or the clock. It can reorder events, place what was apart back together again. In the mind's keeping, the professor never leaves that morning in May 1925. He simply steps off the train in a later scene, and Hachi is there to greet him. Artists have returned to this moment again and again. Some paint the station bathed in cherry blossom light, petals drifting between the man and the dog. Others set it against a snowy dusk, their breath mingling in the air. The variations are many, but the heartbeat is the same. Separation undone, the circle closed. For those who stood in Shibuya during his lifetime, the image offers more than comfort. It offers completion. They remember the real weights. In summer heat, in winter storms, the dog lifting his head each time a train arrived, to imagine that one of those trains finally brought back the man he loved is to allow the story a symmetry that life did not grant. And perhaps this is why the image persists. History, with its ink and dates, can close a life neatly, but love resists such endings. It insists on finding a door where none is visible, a final meeting beyond the reach of loss. The real station, of course, goes on. Trains come and go. Travelers rush past the bronze statue without glancing up. But in the quiet places of the mind, in the spaces where night falls and imagination takes the lead, the platform is still there, the light is still golden, and the man still steps down from the train, greeted by a dog whose waiting has at last found its end. In telling this imagined chapter, people are not rewriting history so much as answering it. They are offering the gift of wholeness to a life that gave itself without condition. They are saying that in some form, in memory, in spirit, in the realm where love carries its own laws, the story concludes as it should. And so, When the book is closed or the lights dim after a film, the image remains. A man, a dog, a station bathed in sun. No departure bell rings. No clock calls them away. And even as the scene fades, the echo of footsteps remains. Footsteps that carry us into the present, where the bronze figure still waits amid the living city, a silent bridge between memory and what is yet to come. Shibuya today is a symphony of movement. Screens the size of buildings flash advertisements in a cascade of color. Crosswalks fill and empty in great waves of footsteps, each green light releasing hundreds of lives into motion. The station swallows and exhales passengers at a rhythm that never falters, like the breathing of some vast, mechanical beast. Amid this restless choreography, the bronze figure of a dog sits motionless. His ears tilt forward, his posture alert, his gaze fixed toward the place where the ticket gates open. He is smaller than some expect. Not a towering monument, but life-sized, approachable. His surface is smoothed to a soft sheen from the hands that have rested there for nearly a century. Most pass without looking. Some stop for photographs, crouching beside him, holding up peace signs. Tourists touch his head as though it might bring luck, unaware that their gesture mirrors the kindness of those who once bent down to greet him when he was alive. A few know the story well. They linger a moment longer, tracing the curve of his back, whispering something before stepping away. The station around him has changed beyond recognition since his time. Where once there were open-air platforms and the hiss of steam engines, there are now sleek trains gliding almost soundlessly into the station. Where there were once small shops selling bento and newspapers, there are now glass-fronted stores and glowing cafes. And yet, the space he occupies feels almost untouched, as though time has flowed around it like water around a stone. If you stand close enough, the world narrows. The rumble of trains becomes a distant hum. The chatter of commuters fades into a muted tide. You begin to imagine what it must have been like on those afternoons long ago. The air heavy with summer heat, or sharp with the bite of winter wind, the crowd spilling from the train. The dog lifting his head each time the doors slid open. Some say they can feel it even now, a presence that is not quite gone. Late at night, when the last trains have departed and the station corridors stand empty, the air seems to hold an echo. The echo is not of engines or voices, but of something softer, closer to the ground. The measured click of claws against stone. It is as though he still makes his rounds, weaving through the shadows, returning to his spot by the gates. Historians often speak of Hachi as a symbol of loyalty, of devotion, of the unbroken bond between human and animal. But here, in the place where he waited, those ideas feel less like grand ideals and more like something lived. The symbol has a weight, a warmth. It stood here in the rain, in the snow, in the crowd of strangers for nearly 10 years. Each day, thousands photograph the statue. The images travel far and fast, posted on social media, sent in messages, saved in digital albums. Some of these photographs will carry captions telling his story. Others will be just another moment in someone's travels, the meaning of the figure left unexplained. And yet, even without the words, the image has a quiet pull. Something in the dog's stillness resists the city's rush, reminding the viewer, however briefly, that waiting is its own kind of strength. There is a strange comfort in the thought that he is still here. Generations have passed, the station rebuilt, the world remade in ways he could not have imagined. Wars have come and gone, economies risen and fallen, but the figure at Shibuya's heart remains. He has watched the shift from steam to electric, from paper timetables to glowing screens. He has been photographed in black and white, in Kodachrome, and in the crisp pixels of the digital age. And yet, for all the changes, the statue's gaze has not moved. It is still fixed in the same direction, toward the same place where the trains arrive. It is as though he is still watching for that one face in the crowd, the one that will finally step forward and make the waiting end. On rainy nights, when the pavements glisten under the neon, you can almost imagine the real Hachi there, the fur damp, the eyes bright with recognition at every approaching figure. You can picture the way he must have shifted his weight, the small twitch of his ears at the sound of a familiar voice. And you can imagine, too, the way the station workers must have looked for him each day, reassured by the sight of him holding his post. In this way, the bronze is more than metal. It is a vessel for memory. Each person who touches it leaves a trace of warmth. Each story told in its shadow becomes part of the larger tale. Hachi's life has ended, but the place where it was lived still hums faintly with its presence. There are children now who grow up seeing the statue before they hear the story. When they finally learn it, there is a moment of stillness, a pause as the pieces fit together. They begin to look differently at the bronze figure. They may visit it again, not just to pose for a photograph, but to stand quietly, as though paying respect to something older than themselves. And perhaps that is the truest legacy of all. Not the fame, nor the films, nor the countless retellings, but the way the story plants itself quietly in the heart and stays there. It whispers of promises kept, of the dignity and patience, of the way love can make a single place the center of the world. Even those who never knew Hachi in life seem to carry a piece of his vigil with them when they leave. They may not realize it, but in moments of their own waiting, at a station, at a door, in the long pause before a reunion, the memory stirs. They stand a little straighter, their gaze a little steadier, and something in them knows the value of not turning away. And so, the bronze dog remains, watching a world that hurries past him yet never truly leaves him behind. The city changes, the crowds change, but the echo of his footsteps still seems to linger in the air. A sound you can almost hear if you are willing to stand still long enough, and as the city moves on, the echo carries forward. A reminder that even in the rush of the present, there are stories worth pausing for, and footsteps whose sound will never fade. And so, under the neon glow of modern Tokyo, where the rush of trains and the hum of voices fill the air, the spirit of a dog from another time still lingers. Patient, steadfast, and unbroken. The years have carried his paw prints far beyond the platform at Shibuya, yet they remain, pressed deep into the quiet soil of human memory. History is often carved in the names of kings and generals, but sometimes it is held in the heartbeat of a single soul. A soul who loved without condition, who kept a promise long after the world thought it had been broken. Hachi's vigil was not a grand act for an audience. It was simply love lived daily until love itself became eternal, and so the candle of that vigil still burns quietly in time. It flickers in the stories whispered to children, in the bronze statue that watches over travelers, and in the hearts of those who have ever waited for someone, knowing they might never come. His devotion is a thread woven through the fabric of our own lives. A reminder that some bonds are stronger than absence, stronger than years. Thank you, dear listener, for sharing this quiet space with me tonight, for pausing in the hush of the hourglass to walk these soft corridors of memory. You are not just hearing history, you are keeping it alive. Now, the night is yours. Let the day loosen its hold. Let the noise fade to nothing. May your dreams carry you gently through the hours ahead, and may you wake with a heart just a little softer, a little more patient, for having been here. This has been the Sleeping Hourglass, where the past tucks you in. If this story brought you peace, you're always welcome to return, to sit again by the firelight of memory. Until we meet again, sleep well, beneath the hush of history's lullaby.